This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. In our last segment, we talked with Jen Sey about abuse and imbalance in girls' gymnastics and the larger question of children in sports. And this time, this episode sponsored by the Herzog Foundation, we're going to talk about boys and girls sports and how that relates to her new fashion brand, XXXY. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks for having me back.
After a childhood mastering elite gymnastics, Jen got her undergraduate degree at Stanford and went on to leadership positions at The Gap and Levi Strauss, becoming the brand president for Levi's. She wrote about that experience in Levi's Unbuttoned, which I happen to have a copy of right here. Wonderful book. And a thought-provoking book that also talks about the impact of the COVID lockdowns, which were extreme there where she lived in San Francisco, and the courage it took for her to try to speak up on behalf of kids. Now Jen is the creator of a new fashion brand, XXXY, which we're eager to talk about also. It looks like, the history you had on the gymnastics floor, constantly facing down the natural fear of injury and even death with these really high level moves that you had to master. That grit that you had to develop stood you in good stead later on. How would you say that your life up to, say, 2024 prepared you for launching your fashion brand?
Oh, goodness. I think a few things. I think my time in gymnastics, which, we talked about in the last episode, taught me a lot about what kind of leader I don't want to be. I had some really terrible coaches, and that stuck with me. And I really, as I entered the corporate world and even in my advocacy, I think in the corporate world, there's a lot of really authoritarian leaders. I think you can be authoritative without being authoritarian. And I think you can be direct and kind isn't quite the right word, but, I want to give people opportunities. I want to give them opportunities to build their career. I want to be respectful. I want to give clear feedback. I want them to know if it's not working, if it's just not the right place for them, the not right role for them. So I just learned a lot about what kind of leader I would want to be by sort of toiling under quite terrible teachers and leaders. So I'd say that's the first thing. I think I learned I can pretty much endure anything. I mean, one of the things I think about a lot is nothing's ever going to be as hard as training in gymnastics. We spent summers training 10 hours a day on 300 calories, and I had a broken ankle. I'm sorry, everything is easy compared to that. So no matter how hard things get, no matter how much people come after me for various things that I say, it's nothing compared to that. So go ahead, try it. Try to take me down. It's not gonna work. And then the last piece is, my sort of understanding of myself and who I am was hard won. When you train in gymnastics, obedience is really what's demanded. And so it's not like I grew up this very assertive and outspoken person. I was very shy and very introverted, and I would have done anything the coaches told me to. And so I had to fight to sort of understand what I believe and kind of push myself really hard to speak out about the things that I care about. And those things are free speech and children. And, I think in terms of speaking out for children, which everything I've ever done is about that, it all really comes back to the idea that I really wish somebody had spoken up for me when I was enduring the pretty brutal training environment. There was no adult in the room willing to say, this is not good for this child or these girls, this team of 20, 30, 50 girls, you're abusing them. No one did it, not one adult. Now, I'm not going to be that person. So I think that's it. I think that's what I learned.
I think of a phrase with you, a voice for the voiceless. You really wanted to advocate for those, especially children in more deprived settings that weren't in school those years of COVID, that didn't have a voice. And the kids who are being abused in sports for the aggrandizement of their coaches and organizations. And I love that. There's kind of
Well said.
a quotation that I have really lived with my whole life by Simone de Beauvoir, who said, "One's life has value so long as we attribute value to the life of others by means of love, friendship, indignation, and compassion." And I think you show all of those qualities in the way you're living your life. I think it's great.
Thank you.
You have become a voice for voiceless young competitors who are girls being pushed aside by male athletes entering as transgender students. And I guess in most cases, all they need to do is self-identify. They don't even have to modify their bodies in order to enter the girls' arena. And how did this get on your radar, and how did you find a voice on that subject?
Yeah. Well, I got myself in a heap of trouble, as you alluded to, during COVID by standing up and advocating for open public schools, which my children attend. So, and you're right, it is a more vulnerable population. In San Francisco, where I live, 60% of the public school students are on free or reduced lunch, which gives you an indication of their family's financial status. These are kids living at or below or slightly above the poverty line in many instances. Meanwhile, their private school peers were all going to in-person school.
Yes, so, of course.
But I became very aware of this issue. In fact, the first time I ever had a conversation about it was with a friend of mine. Her name is Nancy Hogshead, and she was an Olympic gold medalist in swimming in 1984. And we became friends when my first book came out. She had been very outspoken about abuse in sports. There's terrible abuse in swimming as well. And so when I wrote that book, she reached out and we became friends, and she runs an organization called Champion Women, which is a nonprofit supporting female athletes and equality for female athletes. Anyway, she first talked to me about it in 2017 or 18, I think. And it hadn't really been on my radar before. It very much became on my radar in 2020. And I'll be honest, I didn't talk about it then. I felt like at that point I had, not related to sports, but I had several friends, not really friends now, who had children that had transitioned. And I put it in quotes because you can't change your sex. And my friends were in places like, Brooklyn and Seattle and Los Angeles. And that's where this contagion had kind of taken root. And so I was thinking about it a lot, but I wasn't speaking about it very much in 2020 because I was in a lot of trouble already. And I was like, I don't need to add to my problems. But it's interesting. In 2021, I did start to speak out about it a little more, and I was still working at Levi. And at one point, a friend in the company reached out to me, and she said, "I don't know why everybody out in the world is upset with you for your COVID stance. It's not like you think that trans girls shouldn't be able to compete in girls' sports." And I was like, I laughed. I was like, "What? Of course I don't think they should be able to. They're boys." But it was really at that moment, and keep in mind, this is before Riley Gaines at NCAA. This is about a year and a half before that. And I think at that moment, I realized, wow, this is a really big issue. I sort of thought before that it might go away, that it was on the fringe, but it was in that moment that I really realized. And then Riley happened in 2022 at NCAA finals, NCAA swimming finals, and we saw Will Thomas, standing next to her, towering. And that's when it really kind of caught fire in the public's consciousness, despite the fact that there had been many brave women pushing back on this for many, many years, over a decade. And so when I found myself, I resigned from Levi and I went back out to interview for jobs, and everybody asked me if I would apologize for what I'd done, meaning advocate for open public schools. And I realized I'm going to have to find another way forward. And that's when I had the idea for the brand, because it combined my background of, fashion expertise and being an athlete. But I also was really frustrated when I looked at all the other brands out there, Nike in particular, who make a ton of money off of pretending to champion female athletes, but are very much on the wrong side of this issue, and also treat female athletes and female executives with real disregard. So I thought a real brand to stand up for the protection of women's sports and empower female athletes, that's run by women, made for women, could be a powerful force in the marketplace. So that's why I did it.
How did you choose your look, and how did you, dive into the fabric choices and all that? I have no idea what it's like to start from ground up in something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a designer. I've spent a lot of time around clothing designers, managing clothing designers. So I do have an amazing designer here in Denver. Her name is Krista Wisco, and she was one of the first hires. And we just spent a lot of time. We already had a name for the brand, XXXY Athletics. We had a logo. I'd worked with a graphic designer, and I had in my mind an aesthetic. So she and I just spent a lot of time bringing in some of our favorite products, our favorite silhouettes, our favorite fabrics. And we had to construct a really small assortment at first. We can't make a million products, we're just starting out. And so, we knew we wanted some high performance stuff, with moisture wicking fabrics that endure any work, get through any workout, but we wanted some casual stuff too, t-shirts and sweats and that kind of thing. And so we worked on it together. I think she built really incredible fits and a tremendous fabric portfolio. And then we had to find factories that could actually execute her vision. So yeah, that's sort of the process there.
Well, you're quite the entrepreneur, to undertake that. I'm sure it's a very competitive market. Sportswear is probably very competitive, isn't it?
It's very competitive. It is the fastest growing category within clothing, and has been for many years. It's not growing at the rate it once was, but it's growing 6 or 7% a year, meaning the whole category, versus my category that I knew well was jeans. That grows about 1 to 2% a year. So there's still tons of opportunity. Some of the big behemoths are a little weaker than they once were, like Nike. So that provides opportunity as well. And the fact is, no other brand is saying what we're saying. And I believe if we can't protect women's sports and retain the barrier that women's sports are for women, there is no women's sports. The minute a man competes in a women's category, it's not the women's category anymore. And so we don't have women's sports right now. There are boys and men in at least 25 states competing in the girls and women's category. Basically, all the blue states have boys still competing in the girls category. So we have a long way to go. We've made some progress. There's definitely been some good, solid progress. But I still think we have a really long way to go because, 80% of Americans agree that women's sports should be for women only. And yet the vast majority are silent because the 20% is very mean and bullying, and the 80% is afraid of them. Not without reason. I mean, in all fairness, not without reason.
Yeah. These people can get very punitive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're concerned about that. Tell us about your pre-enforcement lawsuit there in Colorado. You live in Colorado now. And the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act has added the use of chosen names and pronouns to its protected sexual expression category. So a firm near and dear to my heart, I'm an allied attorney with ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, is working with you. And what are you all doing on that?
We are one of 3 lawsuits against the state of Colorado pertaining to the bill, which essentially criminalizes misgendering and dead naming, which is absurd. It's compelled speech. So we use what I would call correct pronouns at XXXY Athletics. So I refer to Will Thomas as Will, not Leah, and I call him a he because he is male. That's a crime in Colorado.
To point that out.
Yes.
What's the penalty?
It's not clear yet.
That's a concern.
Exactly. There's a lot. It's very squishy.
We want to take a moment to thank the Herzog Foundation and its growing media network, home to the Conversation Balloons podcast and other incredible faith-focused shows. The foundation is dedicated to strengthening Christian education, helping families, teachers, and entire school communities pass on faith and wisdom from one generation to the next. They do this through free training events, support for new and growing schools, and a media network. Learn more about how the Herzog Foundation is investing in the next generation at herzogfoundation.com.
But yeah, I mean, essentially, like I said, misgendering, dead naming. If we were to do and they explicitly mention advertising in the bill as well, which feels sort of targeted at us because in our ads, we also use correct pronouns. So we have an ad called Stand Up that we launched with about 1.5 years ago. And in it, we say, if you think it isn't fair or safe for boys to compete in girls' sports, and that appears over archival footage of a male athlete slamming the ball in Peyton McNabb's face. And we were kicked off TikTok for that, for misgendering and hate speech. That would also, because we said for males to compete in girls' sports, and it was a male who identified as female who was slamming the ball. That kind of thing, according to the bill anyway, is not allowed in Colorado. So just on the grounds of free speech, I mean, take gender ideology out of it, any of it. Like, to me, this is just clearly compelled speech.
Right. And the Supreme Court is going to be weighing in on, at least on the boys and girls sports. I don't know if they've said when they're going to have oral arguments. I don't know if you know. But
no, I think it's December or January is what is being, that's what I'm understanding.
So we'll probably get a decision in the summer of 2026. There are 2 cases, Little versus Hecox out of Idaho and West Virginia versus BPJ out of West Virginia. And the argument is that it's a violation of equal protection on the basis of sex if you don't allow boys into girls' sports competition.
Right.
And the previous case that we have on this, which was pretty narrow, just said the court would use the lowest level of scrutiny, talking about banning gender-affirming care. They said it's a status related to medical care and age, and for gender-affirming care for minors, and therefore it didn't have to pass a significant level of scrutiny under the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. But this is a little more direct now, and is probably going to be dispositive of a lot of the things that you're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a legal expert. You're the lawyer, so but it seems, my understanding in these cases, gosh, I haven't thought about them for a little bit, but these are states that males were not allowed to compete in girls' sports, and you have trans-identified male athletes who then sued the state to be able to compete in girls' sports. That's my understanding of the general dynamic of the cases. I suspect it will end in favor of the protection of girls' sports. I also suspect that will not end the practice in half the states in America.
Well, we certainly had a little bit of a collision course defined in the last couple of days because of the military and the FBI saying they're going to have neutral physical criteria for performance, and surprisingly, we're getting objections to that, saying how dare you? Women are different than men, and
Such
pick
a
a
cell
lane
phone.
and say
It's such a cell phone. They know. That's the thing that's so crazy about all of this is they know. Nobody actually thinks that a man can become a woman. I don't believe that anybody thinks that. It's all this like just crazy sort of post facto rationalization. And you're exactly right. As soon as women have to meet the same standard as men in a physical fitness test, the Democrats are screaming, that's not fair. Women aren't as strong. Okay, we know that. And the movement, I really honestly believe, because there's so many inconsistencies, it's built on a total illogical house of cards. It will crumble on itself. And I think, I've spoken a lot about this lately. The sports piece of it is at the tip of the spear. It's the most public expression of this gender ideology movement. And the lie that underpins it is that that the left has been pushing and the activists have been pushing is there is no difference between male and female bodies. A boy is a girl if he says he is. Well, that's a lie. Once we get this right in sports, and 80% of Americans agree, we just need them to speak up, the whole thing falls apart. It all crumbles. Because if you agree because of sports that men can't compete in women's sports, then you can't put men in women's prisons either, because you've already acknowledged men are stronger and it's not safe. It also sort of starts to unpeel the whole, transitioning of minors, because if a boy can't become a girl, why would we do that? So the sports piece of it is just so important, because I think it's the tip of the spear. It's the thing that has generated a lot of public support. And I do think once we solve that, I really think the house of cards comes tumbling down. But I think we're far away. So I think we have a lot of work to do. I think it's going to take many, many years. The other side is doubling and tripling down. As I said, no matter what the Supreme Court decides, I think that the blue states are going to continue to compete boys and girls sports. I mean, Gavin Newsom is suing the federal government right now to continue to allow boys to win trophies in girls sports in California. That's how much he's doubling down.
Mm-hmm. You often use the phrase boys and girls sports and spaces. And so you have a position as well on use of restrooms and dorms and traveling in school groups and things like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten stauncher in my position on all of this. Boys cannot become girls. They can't. Girls deserve their own sports and spaces, period. I will make no compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you compromise in one area, then it falls the other direction. I don't accept a third category in sports either. There is no third category of sex. It furthers a lie. There are two categories. There are men and there are women. And all of the chromosomal abnormalities actually still fall into male or female. So the idea of a third category as a concession doesn't work, because I think it promotes the lie that there is such a thing as a third category. They don't want it. USA Swimming tried it and no one showed up. Part of it is these men who want to compete in women's sports, they want to force themselves into the category to validate their identity. And the other problem with it is a very practical one. When there's prize money at stake, which there is in a lot of competitions, that prize money, which is now split evenly between men and women, will get split 2/3 men and 1/3 women, because the pot won't grow. And let's face it, the third category, the non-binary category, whatever it is, men are going to win that. So suddenly you have men getting 2/3. So we have two categories. That's enough. Just compete in the category to which you were born, which means Will Thomas doesn't get to go to NCAA finals.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say another collision course is, at least if a child is transitioning without their parents' consent, if they take up sports, it's going to become known. You got to sign off on the permission slip to play girls tennis or whatever when they're not a girl. And this isn't because.
Can I just add to that though? Because in 44
Sure.
states, you can change your birth certificate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if the proof of sex is, and this is my issue with the current NCAA rules have been changed since the executive order, and the NCAA rules are you have to be female to compete in girls sports, but the proof required is a birth certificate, which can be changed in 44 states.
Okay. Yeah. So they're retroactively making that possible. There's so many ways to go here. but I just want to clarify, and it's been clear from your books and your life that this is not, your position isn't based on some kind of a hostility or religious fundamentalism, some kind of homophobia, because you have worked so closely with people of all kinds of gender identities and experience, and it's not a matter of your heart and openness to people and their struggles.
Absolutely not. I mean, I marched for gay marriage. Your listeners may agree or not agree with that. I lived in San Francisco for 35 years and I worked in the fashion industry. Believe me, I know a lot of gay people. This is not about being anti-gay. This is about being pro-woman and pro-girl. And girls are different than boys. They aren't as strong or as fast. They deserve privacy in their spaces. They deserve to feel safe in their own spaces. Mm-hmm. And they deserve to be safe when they play sports. In some cases, sports are contact sports or combat sports. And they deserve the chance to compete and win. That's why we have Title IX, which was established in 1972. So I don't hate anyone. And in fact, for the young people who are struggling with their identity, I have nothing but empathy. Honestly, I think it's really sad that a young person could be convinced by the culture and the medical community to alter their body because they are in distress. It's sad to me. And, I've had the opportunity in the last year and a half, 2-3 years to meet a lot of detransitioners. And it's incredibly sad. It's malpractice what doctors have done to these young people who, aren't even old enough to drive. And yet they're put on life-altering drugs, often given life-altering surgeries. It's tragic. I mean, I didn't know anything. I was an idiot when I was 13, 14. I was an idiot up until I was probably in my mid-20s. And this medical community is conspiring against these children, and they're furthering these retrograde gender stereotypes. I mean, what is said to a young boy who maybe has more feminine behaviors, might grow up to be gay, is, hey, you might be a girl. Mm-hmm. It's tragic. Mm-hmm. I find this movement anti-woman and anti-gay. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm against it. The biggest reason I'm against it is it violates basic truth. You can't change your sex. Mm-hmm.
Well, and there is scholarship money at stake. There are, there are girls and women who have been really injured by these competitors. And there's a lot at stake in getting this right. And it does speak to the larger issue of who kids are and how we handle their confusion, whether we help them find their way out of it or encourage the confusion. And the medical profession makes money off of it along the way.
Yeah, they create lifetime patients. I mean, if a boy decides they're a girl and starts taking puberty blockers and then wrong sex hormones, meaning estrogen, that child has, then adult, they can't ever stop taking it. They have to be on those drugs for the rest of their lives. If they are coerced into surgeries to physically alter their appearance, they're often botched. They require multiple surgeries to correct. It can never be corrected. They ruin their bodies. The whole thing is so just terribly sad to me. Again, we need to raise our children to love who they are, love their bodies as they are. There's a parallel here with anorexia, but this is more dangerous than that. And if a therapist or a doctor, a pediatrician had an anorexic child in their office, me, when I was young, they would never say, you know what, you are fat. let's give you some speed and, gastric bypass surgery. You're 90 pounds, but we can get you down to 70 pounds. This is not your true self. They would never do that. We never let a child self-diagnose or an adult self-diagnose anything else. And that's what's happening here. And children are being harmed. But it's a medical malpractice scandal, I think, that's bigger than anyone ever, except maybe the opioid crisis. And we will get through it, but too many children will be harmed in the process.
Yeah, I see one thread through your life, being unscrupulous adults, being almost predatory on impressionable kids who want to please, and are not, capable of resisting the blandishments of these unscrupulous people on their own. So they do need our help, and they need adults in the room. And certainly I notice that if it were simply about identity and self-determination and bearing the burden of gender confusion and letting a child express what they think they are, then we would have about the same number of girls wanting to participate in boys sports. Clearly that is not what's happening.
No, right now, the way the rules are, everyone gets to compete in girls sports. Girls is basically the open category. These are all the people that get to compete in girls sports. Girls who think they're girls who think they're boys, they compete in girls sports. Boys who think they're girls, boys with DSDs compete in girls. Like basically the whole non-binary compete in girls. Everybody competes in girls. And the only category that's sort of got a barrier around it is men's. It should be exactly the opposite. The men's is open and anyone can compete in it if they think they can do it. And women's is cordoned off and for those born XX only. The whole world is upside down. And, I think you've laid it out very nicely. I mean, they claim it's about identity. This is why when USA Swimming tried to create a third category, none of these trans-identified people showed up. That was an insult because sport was about validating their identity. Unless, of course, you're a girl who thinks you're a boy, then it's about winning. It's all like none of it makes any, none of it really makes any sense. But here's the thing: for the males claiming to be female and saying, it's too mean to have them compete in men's. Sports are not about identity validation. That's not the goal. That is never the goal. Sports are exclusive by nature. You make the team or you don't. You make the award stand or you don't. And there's weight classes and age classes and all sorts of classifications. And the most primary classification is sex. So I'm sorry, boys that think you're girls. If you're not good enough, there's a place for you to compete. It's called the boys and men's category. If you're not good enough to make the team, that's sports. That's sports.
Now, where can people go to buy your brand XXXY or find out more about you, Jen Sey?
You can get the brand at thetruthfits.com or just go to xx-xyathletics.com. Best way to just follow what's going on with the brand is to follow us on socials, Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow me. I just use my name, Jennifer Sey, on X is probably where I keep folks abreast of what's happening with the brand.
Okay. And make sure you spell it Jennifer, S-E-Y.
That's right.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for your time and your insight. And we thank the Herzog Foundation for sponsoring this episode. And if you want to know, if you want to hear a great interview by an adolescent psychiatrist about gender transition for minors, my interview with Miriam Grossman, you can tune into that. Thank you so much, Jen, and I look forward to seeing you at a conference coming up. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LEAHFARISH. This episode is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.